Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Daily Factor. I'm going solo today. My name is Faraz Patel and I'll be in your company for the next 1 hour in our new time slot. Of course, we still will be sticking with our updates in terms of the globe, Africa, local updates. We go to community news. And of course, we will be having our markets and our sport update. So stay tuned to us for the next 1 hour. But of course, as we start every Daily Factor with, we go to the COVID-19 stats, which will be appearing on our screen that of course were recorded last night. And as you can see, it continues to grow while we see the third wave taking precedence right here. 4,209 new cases of COVID-19 were recorded. Unfortunately, there were 120 deaths. So the current recovery rate, though, is still sitting at 93%. Move now to our updates on the roads, and I'd like to bring in Netcare 911 Media Manager Sean Herbs just to give us an idea of currently what's happening on the roads. Sean, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. Sean, let's give us an update of currently what is happening on the roads. Of course, peak time traffic is just about to kick in.
Good afternoon, sir. Well, Wednesday's pretty much been, as we expected, fairly quiet on the roads. Only a notable incident that we can report of wasn't on the roads, a private farm area on a construction site. A adult male driving a construction tractor lost control of his tractor, ended up rolling it. The tractor eventually crushed him. When paramedics arrived on scene, they found him in a critical condition. He had sustained severe polytraumatic injuries. He was stabled on scene by paramedics who, due to the nature of his injuries, had called the Netcare 911 helicopter to airlift him through to a specialist facility in Pietermaritzburg area. Lost for the rest of the road, small fender benders, it's the normal story. There's some of the hours as well, going home. Just caution everyone to drive slower, keep your following distance, drive with your headlights on.
Yeah, Sean, I think we've got load shedding. Of course, stage 4 has officially kicked in. And I know it's a lot of frustration. So what are you hearing with regards to that? Of course, there's going to be a number of traffic lights that are going to be out, just causing complete mayhem.
Correct, yes. What we do see in some of the bigger intersections, which we find mostly in the city areas or approaching the city areas, collisions, everyone, especially some of the hour wants to get home fast. Everyone always believes that they have rights of way when it comes to the four-way intersection during load shedding. And the smaller in town itself, the small little towns, small fender benders. But once again, it comes to the situation where people don't stop to look. The days of first come, first go. I think that's fallen out the window for a lot of people, and no one just listens to that anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I had a similar experience going home. People just cutting in, and it's especially now during the load shedding period, people just seem not to listen. Sean, before I let you go, I know yesterday you told me there was a road rage incident that happened. Do you have any update with regards to that?
Yes, the patient was admitted through to a specialist facility. He is currently still in a critical condition. As I mentioned, he had been shot in his abdomen. He is still in the care in the ICU unit. He will be there under sedation for a few days until he makes a fair enough recovery that a tube can remove from his lungs, and hopefully he'll see improvement.
Well, Sean Herbs from Netcare 911, I'd like to thank you for making the time for us and just keeping us updated currently what is happening on the roads. And as Sean mentioned, we just need to be careful right now. Sean, thank you very much for making the time for us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there we go. Sean Herbs from Netcare 911 and just giving us an update on what had happened obviously earlier today, and of course what could be happening later on. Remember, stage 4 load shedding has officially kicked in, so we are waiting for our next guest to come on, and of course this is going to be a discussion with regards to what has happened yesterday with Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Now, he had been placed on a special leave, so we are waiting for Sipamandla Masimula. He's from the Independent Liberation and Allied Workers Union. He is the Secretary General of that union to go ahead. He's got a different perspective of currently what has happened. But let me break down, of course, what had happened. So, of course, Scorpio, which is part of the Daily Maverick, had, of course, done its investigation on a Digital Vibes. Now, this company had, of course, been given contracts to the Department of Health with regards to COVID-19 digital spectrum, and of course just trying to help many people with regards to COVID-19 updates and stuff like that. Now apparently there is a link to Dr. Zweli Mkhize with regards to that, and of course there were talks that Dr. Zweli Mkhize could either be placed on special leave or he could resign. So what happened yesterday, of course, just before we closed off, going off air here on the Daily Factor, the presidency had placed the Minister of Health on special leave. I'm going to read you the statement coming out from the presidency, and I quote, President Cyril Ramaphosa, as of today, which was yesterday, placed Minister of Health Dr. Zweli Mkhize on special leave. This period of special leave will enable the minister to attend allegations and investigations concerning contracts between the Department of Health and a service provider, Digital Vibes. The Special Investigating Unit is investigating this matter, and the President is awaiting a report on the outcome of this probe. Now, currently, who is acting as the serving Minister of Health is Ms. Mamloko Ngubane. Of course, she is the Minister of Tourism, so she'll be serving as the acting Minister of Health until further notice. So again, this is a ongoing scenario that is currently occurring, and we wait to see what is going to be happening with regards to the scenario right over here. And I think it's quite interesting to see that if the crackdown on corruption is about to happen, then this crackdown should be happening quite soon. So we are going to be waiting for Sipho Mandla to join us on Zoom, and hopefully he'll be able to go ahead and give us an idea of currently what is going to be happening. But do stay tuned to the Daily Factor. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to the Daily Factor. Let's go to our community news. Now, over the past few days, there has been a video circulating at a Port Shepstone Islamic Center of two boys fighting. Now, of course, it did turn violent. We do have the visuals of that. And while we're playing the visuals and speaking to Dr. Ayub Bucks from the Port Shepstone Islamic Institution, he'll be able to give us what exactly had happened and, of course, what is currently happening. Let me bring in Dr. Bucks. Dr. Bucks, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam and jazakallah for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Bucks, I just wanted to start, we saw what had happened obviously in this video, and we know that Port Shepstone, especially the Muslim community, is a very close, tight-knit community. How has this fight sort of affected the community? Because these are two families that, of course, you know very well. So can you just give us an idea of how this fight has sort of, got the attention of the community? And it's not in a good way. This is definitely something in a very bad way.
Yeah, so the video that went viral has not only caused serious discomfort and pain to the Khan and the Patel family. The video has also caused a lot of pain and discomfort for the community as a whole. While we share in the joys and in the successes of our learners and our teenagers and the community in Port Shepstone, we also share in their pain and their sufferings. There's an old cliche that says that it takes a village to grow a child. And I think as a community in Port Shepstone, and I speak on behalf of most of them, we share in the responsibility of what you're seeing on the video today. We plead guilty that we didn't service our children better than we would like to have. And we are sad and disappointed that it had to come to this.
Dr. Bucks, I just wanted to find out of the boys and in terms of the counseling, because I think on one hand you need to have counseling in order to deal with somebody who's seemingly loves fighting or, loves to be in this, and on the other, somebody who's dealing with trauma. So I just wanted to find out, how is the community helping in order to make sure that both these boys can get respective counseling and that we never have to see something like this in an Islamic institution? Dr. Bucks? Okay, we seem to be having a technical issue there with Dr. Bucks. Dr. Bucks, can you hear me? Okay, we seem to be having we seem to be having a technical problem with Dr. Ayub Bucks, so hopefully we'll be able to get him through. And I think what's sad about that video is that in an Islamic institution you have these fights. Now, of course, there is no audio that we are currently playing as the overlay, but what can be heard is a lot of fighting, a lot of swearing, that is happening in the back. And what's sad also is that you see that you have one boy there in the back and another, of course, doing the videoing, and there's vulgar language that is being used. And in a madrasa like this over here, to have that, I think it's really, really disturbing. Dr. Bucks, are you back with us? Okay, Dr. Bucks, we're going to have to ask you to unmute your Zoom, please. Dr. Bucks?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No.
Regarding the teenagers...
Yeah, please do carry on.
Regarding the teenagers, obviously the one child is from the Potchefstroom Islamic School, and the other teenager is from a nearby school. The teenager... Patel has been addressed regarding the consequences of his action. He's been advised on anger management. Maulana Imran Khamisa, who's the Imam of the Al-Bazul Masjid, nearby where it happened, and who's also the principal of the Potchefstroom Islamic School, also did try and engage with the Khan family. Unfortunately, they wanted some time to essentially attend to their child who was in hospital and has subsequently been discharged, alhamdulillah. So Maulana Imran has given them the time, and as soon as they are ready, we will try and bring the two learners and the families together and see how this can be addressed for both the parties. The Khan family has also laid a charge at the local police station. So obviously the community will allow that process to go through. And I think the law must take its course, whatever the outcome of that may be. So there's also been several accusations and counter-accusations, and we just want to alert the people at large that everything that you read on social media is not absolutely correct. And some of these facts need to be checked out.
Dr. Bucks, I just want to get the ages of the two. I think one looks a bit older than the other. So these are teenagers, am I right?
Yeah, they're both about 14 years old. So they both are almost the same age. It's just that the one child is bigger in size than the other.
Dr. Bucks, what now needs to happen to make sure this does not happen again? We see bullying is becoming part and parcel of a lot of our schools, and Islamic schools and madrasas are not immune to this. So what do you think needs to be done in order to make sure that we do not have an incident like this? Because this is not a good sign, especially for a madrasa and an Islamic school, in trying to portray Islam as this religion of peace. We know it's a religion of peace, but when we see this happening, it just doesn't give a good sign to anyone to say, hey, listen, there are also fights that are happening in madrasas and in Islamic schools.
Yeah, I think the reality is that bullying is an old age problem. I think all schools, including the Potchefstroom Islamic School, spend a lot of time educating the learners on the telltale signs of early bullying. The trick is to catch it early and address the parties concerned. Even a simple thing as a child taking your pen away from you is an act of bullying, and it needs to be addressed immediately rather than wait for a huge fight between two learners and two families. So I think as a school, we've done our best. I think as a community, members of the community, fellow learners, and most important of all, the parents need to play their role. I think we need to see this from a community as a symptom rather than a problem. And I think the sooner that we address the problem, the better for one and all. Even for these young learners, even though the outcome was poorer for one child compared to the other, I'm hoping, inshallah, that they would learn from this experience and it will hold them in good stead in the years to come.
Now, Thuma, and we hope that bullying, it's going to take a long time for it to be challenged and taken away, but we hope, inshallah, that we can deal with it so our children do not have to suffer the trauma and they can go to school and do what they need to do, and that's get a good education. Chairperson at the Port Shepstone Islamic School, Dr. Ayub Bucks, I said jazakallah at you for making the time and clarifying it, because it's one thing having this video circulating, but it's another giving facts to it. You've given the facts, and I think everyone, I hope, will be able to take that facts and, of course, move away from rumors of who is right and who is wrong and get to the bottom of this. Jazakallah, Dr. Bucks.
Yeah, Jazakallah for having me. And just a few of the false accusations.
Okay, we seem to be losing Dr. Bucks there. Let's go to our daily COVID-19 Muslim statistics. And of course, this is, of course, always provided to us every single day. Well, over the last few hours, of course, 18 COVID-19 related deaths were recorded, 14 of which are from Gauteng. And of course, there were 25 new COVID-19 cases that were recorded amongst the Muslim community here. We say again, please do stay safe, please do wear your mask, and let's do our best to fight this current third wave. Well, as we do every single day, right here on the Daily Factor, we will be taking a look at our markets. So coming up, we have Petri Redinglingeys. Well, Petri is, of course, with Herenya Capital Advisors, and he gives us our daily market updates. Petri, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to you too.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, well, Petri, let's go ahead. Let's give our market updates with just under an hour to go before it closes.
Yeah, so it's quite a bit of time left to go before the end of the day. So we're kind of, almost just over midway of the week, right? Top 40 index somewhat or slightly down, 0.06%, so not massively. But generally it's a somewhat better day for the rest of the market today. Resource 20 index still under some pressure, 1.6% lower. But industrial 25 index up around 0.25%. Financial 15 index adding almost 2.5% today, so that's fantastic. Precious metals and mining index up around 0.25% as well. And then the JSE retailers index is up just over 1%. And then also, I suppose the real estate index is one to look at. Some real estate companies, Vukile Property Trust, putting out some results today, doing really well. And that index is up around 1.6%. I guess, some of the more, individual stocks that are standing out, if you will, are definitely sort of in the banking sector, right? I mean, Standard Bank up almost 5%, Nedbank up almost 6% on the day. So really solid performances coming out there. I think that, the overall sort of expectations versus the current reality, people are expecting slightly worse than what is happening. And, we can start seeing the actual economic recovery starting to take place. And I think we spoke about this a bit yesterday, where the year-on-year number is very deceiving, right? But the 2-year comparison is a bit more accurate. And we'll get into that. I think we'll chat about Vukile in a second. I just quickly want to have a look at some of the offshore indices. FTSE 100 index in the UK currently down just over 0.1%. In Germany, the DAX index down around 0.6%. French market today up actually 0.1%. In the US, markets are open on that side, not yet off to the races as such. S&P 500 currently positive by 0.05%, so very, very, very little. Dow Jones Industrial Average currently negative by a similar margin. The NASDAQ, the tech index, of course, up around 0.2%, and the Russell 2000 still somewhat unchanged. Commodity space, gold also mostly flat today, $1,893 a fine ounce at the moment. Platinum down around 0.6% at $1,155 a fine ounce. Energy prices on the up though. Brent crude oil up around 0.8%, trading in London currently $72.81 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude, that which is produced and traded in the US, is up around 0.7% at $70.55 a barrel. Currency world, the rand a little bit weaker on the back foot, 30 basis points weaker versus the dollar at 13 rand 60, 0.6% weaker versus the euro at 16.60, and a 0.2% weaker versus the pound at 19.23. So just quickly having a look at Vukile property fund, as you know, you wanted to have a look, so let's have a look at that.
I think I mean, we're reading according to Business Day, of course. Now, Vukile, of course, they own a portfolio of shopping malls, and we know during, of course, the start of the lockdown, a lot of the rentals, of course, decreased because shops, of course, weren't able to open. And I think what's interesting, Petri, is that you've seen that, okay, we're going to have this economic recovery, but there's still going to be that sort of a gap with regards to how do these businesses who operated in malls, who paid this high rental, can go back and continue to pay these major amounts of rental fees that, of course, a lot of these malls charge them. And, of course, we see that Vukile Income Fund, of course, the income fell by a fifth in the year into March. So just give us your take on rentals and property, and of course, how do you see it sort of trying to build itself up after we had that long year of the lockdown?
Right. So I think what's interesting to note within the Vukile sort of results is that there was a very strong recovery in rental collection, right? So rent collection for South African, their South African assets, if you will, or malls, is at 98% at this stage. For the European operations, some of the Spanish operations, that's sitting currently at 95%. So it does show that there is a strong sort of rebound in the tenants' ability to pay rent. And a lot of the time, particularly the bigger tenants, their rental agreements is based on turnover, right? So your rent that you pay is a percentage of the total value of the trade that you do on the premises. So to see those numbers sort of really starting to recover, I think is very encouraging, because it shows that, well, there is a bit of a recovery. I think that the landscape will probably change forever from here. I think that, a lot of the stuff will probably have to be repurposed. I don't see malls disappearing. I just see that there'll probably be fewer small independently owned businesses in malls. I mean, there was some damage done, and some of that damage was obviously permanent, right? Some of these small companies, many of these small companies didn't make it. And some of the bigger ones, even if you look at the likes of Edcon, for example, they might not make it in the end anyway, right? So there is definitely going to be a change in the way we do things. And I think that, okay, Vukile is maybe not necessarily the same as some of the rest, but a lot of these sort of commercial property funds and real estate investment trusts and so on, a lot of that commercial property in Sandton, for example, will be repurposed to be residential property at some point. So from office space to living area, right? And that is probably, in the long term, probably a positive result in general for quality of life types of stuff, traffic pressure and all sorts of things, right? Working from home has definitely changed the shape of the working environment for permanently and probably for the better. So all that aside, I think, if you look at the Vukile results in particular, they go out of the mention footfall through the malls is almost at a point where it was pre-pandemic. So people going shopping, people returning to a normal sort of life, which is obviously supportive of the malls and the whole sort of ecosystem within them, whether that is the small businesses or the big businesses that operate in them, as well as the owners of the properties, like the Vukile Property Fund, for example. What we're starting to see is on a 2-year comparative basis. So before the pandemic, and now the most recent set of results is that we're almost there. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting sort of within 10 or so % of the same amount of footfall through the malls as what there was before the pandemic hit, which is very encouraging, right? So it shows that, yeah, there is quite a bit of permanent damage that was done to the economy, and then people have lost jobs, and this we know is absolutely true. But those people that were going to the malls and kind of, being mall rats and shopping all the time, they're starting to go back to that. And for the most part, they're kind of back to normal, right? Which I think is a very encouraging result to see. And I think, if you look at sort of just from, a pure earnings perspective, Vukile pays out, last year, this time they made a loss of, I think it was something like 10 cents a share. Now they print a profit of 101 cents a share. So, 79% of that or 75% of that needs to be paid out as I think their payout ratio is 79%. The requirement is 75. So most of that gets paid out as a dividend to shareholders, and the share price reacted really positively. It's up over 6% on the day. And I think this speaks a lot to that value investment sort of theorem. Everyone's been focused on tech. And, obviously the pandemic helped push tech way higher than what it probably should be. And now we're starting to see a return in value, right? We're starting to see that traditional assets, may have had some difficult times, but in the long run, they're starting to recover and things are starting to go a bit better for them. And then, we see very strong share price reactions. Something like Vukile is probably a good buy around these levels.
Yeah, and I think, the traditional going to the malls still exist. And of course, it may just pick up, as you say, Petri, versus that of the online shopping. And I don't think the board of directors of these online shopping conglomerates would want to hear the traditional means of going to the malls creeping up again. Petri Redingling-Hayes from Herenia Capital Advisors, we say thank you so much for joining us again, and we will see you tomorrow on the same time.
Thank you.
Petri Redingling-Hayes giving us the market updates for today. Well, after the break, we will have our sport update. It's cricket time in the Caribbean. South Africa are on their way, well, they're there already, to do their tour of the West Indies, 2 tests and a couple of T20s. Stay tuned after the break. Welcome back to the Daily Factor. It's time for your sports update. Well, the South African national cricket team are currently in the West Indies for a 2-test series and 5 T20s. Of course, this is in the lead up ahead of the T20 World Cup that is scheduled to be in India in October. Now, to discuss the tour of the Caribbean, I have freelance sports journalist Khuliso Nemarimela. Khuliso, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Factor.
Very good afternoon to you, Faraz, and to all your viewers.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Khuliso, South Africa, in the last 2 tours, haven't won a series. This is concerning going into this one in the West Indies. Now, we know, of course, there's a bunch of new guys that are there. This is Dean Elgar's first test as a test captain. 2 tests. How do you see this going? It's going to be a huge challenge, especially in those conditions in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it's going to be big for both South African batsmen and bowlers, to be honest with you, because for the longest time, South Africa has depended on either the batsmen or the bowlers. We've always knew that if Hashim Amla does not get you 100 or a 311, Dale-Steyn can come back and get you 7 wickets. The same with Venanfield and the same with Morne Morkel. When they were playing for South Africa. But at this point now, I actually wrote a piece about this yesterday for us, that Kagiso Rabada could only hold the fort for that long. And when you're looking at the likes of Lungingidi and Andrik Nokia, they never really, they haven't been there long enough and consistently enough with the injuries that they've had, both of them, of the past couple of years. They haven't been there long enough to say we've got a formidable front attacking 3 players when it comes to the fast bowlers. The same goes with the opening batsmen, Dean Elgar and Aiden Markram. Loads of talent, loads of potential for the 2 batsmen. but they never really, they don't give us the best foundation often enough for us to say we can depend on them in terms of the bet. You know, I was listening to Lungingidi talking about the conditions there and how the weather is at the moment. It keeps changing, you know, so when it gets hot, you will get that famous South African or famous Caribbean bounce. But then when the conditions are overcast, then they will have to use the swing, which is something that the South African bowlers have not really perfected in the past couple of series. So I really hope that they come back with something and then they can build on that momentum going forward.
Kuliso, of course, both tests taking place in St. Lucia. Now, what we know about St. Lucia, as you mentioned it, you know, you have that nice, flat, hard track that the paceman can go at, the likes of your Rabadas and your Norkias and your Ngidis. But of course, Maharaj and Tabrei Shamsi bring bought in. I think on that third and that fourth day, when that wicket starts to slow, do you think they can be effective on the sort of a wicket if the test, of course, does get pushed towards potentially the fifth day?
I think more than those two, I think it will be the off spin of Aiden Markram. Because if you look at the West Indies team at the moment now, they've got Kimarosh, they've got Jason Holder, they've got forgot the other ball, and then they've got
Kieran Powell.
They've got Alzari Joseph as well. So those are all pace bowlers, which tells you that the wicket that they're going to prepare now is going to be very simmer, going to be very bouncy, going to be very pace friendly. So it tells you that South Africa will probably be playing two spinners, you know. And I think if South Africa actually do play a spinner, I think it will be George Linde more than Tabrei Shamsi, as well as Keshav Maharaj. I think George Linde offers you a little bit more with the bat as well, because he's an established all-rounder. So I don't know if it's going to be a toss of a coin between him and Vian Mulder, if they'll want to go with both of them. But I think if spin was to play any part here, it will be probably for West Indies, Rakim Cornwall, if he does play. And for South Africa, it will probably be George Linde assisted by Aiden Markram, because over the past in Pakistan, he bowled more often than we were used to him bowling. I don't see Dean Elgar bowling, but I see Aiden Markram getting some balls, especially on the third and fourth day.
Kuliso, the last time South Africa toured, you mentioned Pakistan, they lost both the test matches there. I think what's going to be interesting is how they go ahead and they sort of react. Dean Elgar, I mean, you and I worked at the previous media house. We've interacted a lot with Dean Elgar. He seems a very nice guy, but it's no use just being a nice guy. You need to have a sense of assertiveness when you are the captain of the Proteas. How well do you think he's going to do in this series? I know it's his first series, but where do you see him going from here, and how does he build on with regards to that captaincy going forward?
I think the good thing about Dean Elgar is that his captaincy of the Proteas test team is not going to define his career, because he's laid a proper what do you call foundation for his career as a batsman for the Proteas, as an opening batsman for the Proteas. So I don't think it's going to be it's going to give him a lot of pressure. If this captaincy was given to someone like Aiden Markram or even Temba Bavuma, for argument's sake, I think it would have been a bit heavy to lead a team that's trying to get on the rise again. But we all know that Dean Elgar is a proper opening batsman. Dean Elgar is a proper leader. He's led he's been one of the leaders at the Titans for the longest time since he came to Pretoria from the Free State. So I think he will be a proper leader. But one thing that he needs to do now is to with the bat, he needs to make sure, or him and Aiden Markram, they need to make sure that as batters, before any role that they could have in the team, as batters, they lay the proper foundation so that the likes of Rasif and Keegan Peterson, as well as Temba Bavuma, when they come through, they build on that momentum. In terms of captaincy, I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I don't think it's going to define his career, but I think the batting now, because I think this is the first time that Aiden Makram has been to the Caribbean, so you're hoping that he gets a deck that looks a little bit like the one at the Wanderers, where he can bat proper, you know, and we do know that there won't be a lot of, the outfield is going to be very slow. So they are not going to get a lot of boundaries, which means they're going to have to be doing a lot of running between the wickets, which Dean Elgar does really well. But the likes of Rassi van der Dussen, as well as the Aiden Makram, might have a little bit of challenges there. But Dean Elgar and captaincy, I think is going to be fine.
Kuliso Marimela, freelance sports journalist. I assure you this is not the last you're going to see of him, of the Daily Fact. And of course, we will be discussing with him throughout the series. And of course, the upcoming European Championships that begins on Friday. Kuliso, thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
There, Kuliso Marimela, freelance sports journalist there, just giving us an idea of the test series that starts tomorrow. Of course, the first test, well, both tests, of course, going to be taking place at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground in St. Lucia. Tomorrow, of course, the first one, and on the 18th, the second one. And then the National Cricket Stadium in Grenada will host the 5 T20s to complete the Proteas Tour of the Caribbean. Well, that's all we have for you on the Daily Factor. Do join us again tomorrow between 3:30 to 4:30. From myself, Faraz Patel, do take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.